fight and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Dan McLennan.
No game since New Year's Day, but United still sit in fourth place. Not a bad start to the year for the Blues. In this episode, we look ahead to this weekend's clash with Newport County at Brunton Park and answer some of your questions about Carlisle United. Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to the it's the second of the year, isn't it? Because we did a review, didn't we, of the Domcast again? We keep forgetting that. So, second episode of the year of 2023. No games to review, Dan. But as I said in the intro, there we haven't dropped a place at all, have we? I think we expected to be down about 5th or 6th, didn't we? By now.
Yeah, I think I'm not a big one for bothering with other teams' results this early. I'm only really interested at the business end, but Rochdale did us a right favour winning at Bradford.
Hell of a result for them.
It still puts a question over Mark Hughes, which sounds daft because they're 5th in the league, but
Yeah, I mean they're on the same number of points of us, albeit with a much worse goal difference. But I don't think he's having that bad of a... With the squad he's got, I think he's actually doing pretty well, to be honest.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what he brings in the next couple of weeks, you know.
I mean, Matt Derbyshire's one he's brought in, isn't it? And that's kind of one of those ones. You look and you think based on the name, great sign, but then you look at who he's played for in recent years and where he's been, you think, actually, he's not really done much. But that's a case of a manager knowing a player, isn't it, for a while, isn't it? But there you go.
Yeah.
So today's episode is going to be a little bit different, similar to last week's, in that we haven't actually got a game to review. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the news and the Loan Watch roundup, and then we're going to answer some of your questions. We put a little call out on social media this morning asking you to send in your questions, and you sent them in your droves, didn't you?
Cheers for that. I'm on nights this week, and I woke up to about 58 notifications on Twitter and Facebook. And
I completely forgot.
I was like, what the hell? I was like, what the hell's going on? Who've we signed?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's just Lee asking a question.
Yeah, Lee asking questions, but there you go. We've got some in there. Some taking the mickey, I think it's fair to say, and some really good and interesting ones. There's some that we won't be able to answer because we probably need to go a bit more in depth, so we might do something a bit longer in those ones. But other than that, we'll try and cover as many as we can in the time we've got available to us. Let's obviously start the show, and at this point, we tell you all about who is sponsoring the podcast this season, and of course, how you can find out about us on social media and subscribe to the podcast. We're very proud to say that once again this season, the podcast has been sponsored by the Carlisle United Sports Club London branch. The London branch is open to all Carlisle United fans. They've got members from Cornwall to Dundee and Houston, Singapore, and of course, every part of London and the South East. They regularly meet up on away trips, as well as arranging many social events, sports games, and fundraising for the club. They'll be providing us with information for the away games as part of the preview section this season too. You can find out more about the London branch at their website, carlisle.londonbranch.org. Just a reminder also, if you don't already, please do subscribe to the podcast. You can do that on any good podcast app, wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, any good podcast app. If you just search for the Brunton Bugle, click subscribe, and then every time a new episode comes out, you will get it straight into your inbox. And if you don't already, please do follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at Brunton Bugle. Same address on Instagram at Brunton Bugle. If you search for the Brunton Bugle on Facebook and click like, you can follow us there. And we're also on the Be Just On Fear Not Facebook group, which is a fantastic community. Over 3,000 people in there. Would recommend joining it, definitely. We're on the Cumbrians.net message board, and you can find us on email, bruntonbugle@gmail.com. Okay, Dan, let's get into the news section. A couple of little bits. It's transfer related again this week that we got to cover. We were hoping, because we did contemplate recording this on Wednesday, didn't we? We thought if we leave it as long as possible, we might have some more transfer news, but we don't, unfortunately. But I know exactly what's going to happen here.
It's actually Thursday afternoon at the moment. I'm just sat on my couch watching O'Sullivan and Williams in the snooker while we record. And I can absolutely guarantee, I'd be amazed if we don't, we'll probably announce someone at about 4 o'clock, just because that's how it works.
It's sod's law, isn't it? We are basically doing this for the Carlisle United benefit to make sure that we do sign someone before the weekend, basically. Yeah. So give us some credit there. There you go. Right, well, into the news then, Dan. First up, let's talk about the one coming in. We've got a midfielder who's signed up, haven't we, Dan, for the rest of the season?
My little tick list's going well. I asked for left-sided defence.
Yeah.
We got that. I asked for a midfielder with a little bit of experience. It looks like we've got that too.
Yeah, exactly. So Taylor Charters obviously is likely to miss the rest of this campaign, and Sonny Hilton's gone back to Fulham. So Simo's moved quickly to bring in another midfield option early in the transfer window, and that is the arrival of Alfie McCalmont on loan till the end of the season from Premier League side Leeds United. Alfie is actually a full Northern Ireland international.
I love it when we have a full international. Oh, it's great, isn't it?
I've got at least one friend who absolutely hates the fact that Reggie Lamb holds the record for the most international appearances for Carlisle United. He hates that. So he's basically...
Callum Hope was close to him,
yeah,
but then he got found ineligible for a couple of them, didn't he?
He had one taken off him, didn't he? And he scored in that one as well.
I think it was two in the end, yeah.
What unlucky, isn't that? Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it, to think all this is happening basically the last 16, 17 years, I think, that we suddenly got all these internationals, because prior to that, the only one we had was Eric Welsh, wasn't it? So, incredible, wasn't it? So, yeah, Alfie is a fully Ireland international.
Peter Murphy.
Yeah, Peter Murphy was the next one, wasn't he? The first one, wasn't it? And then, obviously, Lubo. So, yeah, Alfie is a full Northern Ireland international. He's yet to make his debut for the Yorkshire side, but he has actually had, as you mentioned, Dan, he's got a bit of experience. 2 loan spells. One at League 2 level with Oldham Athletic 2 years ago, where he made 39 appearances and scored 10 goals. In all competitions. I mean, some strikers at our level will be happy with a return like that, wouldn't they? I think it's fair to say. And then he had a loan spell at Morecambe last season. Not quite as successful in terms of goals, but 31 appearances in all competitions. And
I think he played a lot deeper for Morecambe.
Yeah, and you've got to consider the fact that Morecambe really were in a relegation battle last season. So it was always going to be a lot tougher for him there. But good experience all the same. From what we can gather, he's a bit of a combative midfielder. He can play a bit deeper, or he can get forward as well. As you mentioned, he's already played for Northern Ireland full side. He's got 4 caps. Interestingly, all 4 of them have been wins. I checked this before. I thought I'll have a look and see. All 4 games were wins, which Northern Ireland haven't been that good in the last.
I was going to say that's pretty good, because Northern Ireland they've had their little spell, which culminated in the Euro 2016 appearance, and they've been on a bit of a downward. So interesting that he's got a win ratio, and we probably will lose him for a couple of games in March, won't we?
I think it's only going to be one game, hopefully, as long as we don't have a Tuesday night game rearranged at some point. It will be the game against Gillingham away. That's the weekend of the international week. I mean, what a perfect weekend to have Gillingham away, because we can watch it on the iFollow. We don't have to travel down to that terrible away end for that game. So that's a gift. I actually
know someone we know, Martin, who's one of our regular listens from Northamptonshire. Him and his mate, he was telling me the other day, are planning a night out in Gillingham around this game, purely because, have you ever heard of anyone go to Gillingham on the drink?
There's a very good reason for that. Having been to Gillingham a few years ago, they are lovely people from Gillingham, I'm sure, if there's any of this listening. Not a good place to go for a drink, it's fair to say. Just before to round it up, Dan, he actually made his full international debut before he made his first team debut in football.
Yeah.
Mad that, isn't it? You do find that on Northern Ireland occasionally, don't you? Though?
Yeah. On a serious note, I actually wonder, how old is he now? He's 22. He turns 23 in March. I actually wonder if this is another like Robinson, where it's possibly with a view to something in the summer.
I mean, that would kind of make sense.
He's going to be 23-year-old, and he's not been round the Leeds first team enough, has he?
No, he hasn't really. I mean,
so he's got to make a decision at some point.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out when his Leeds contract expires. I can't see. Unfortunately, when you go on Transfermarkt now, it tells you when his Carlisle United loan spell contract expires. So I can't see how long his Leeds. I think he might have another year left at Leeds, but I'm pretty sure Ryan Edmondson had another year left at Leeds, and they let him come to us. So So
I think at that sort of age.
Yeah. Well, we're reaping the benefits, aren't we, of that wonderful relationship with Leeds that we got told about by who. Although, funny enough, that only seems to have happened when Greg Abbott returns to the club, someone who actually does have a good relationship with Leeds United, isn't it? It's funny, that, isn't it? But yeah, so welcome Alfie to the club. He's going to wear squad number 35. Interesting, that's quite a high number, isn't it? They're missing out some of the low ones. But I'd imagine he's not coming in just to be warming the bench, Alfie. I think he's coming in to play games, isn't he? I think that's the aim with him, I'd imagine. So
it'll be good pressure on Moxon and Guy as well. You know, if we do have a couple of bad games, he maybe will step in, or he'll maybe sort of start if we do go 4-3-3 for some games, you know.
Well, if we go back to that three in midfield in the 5-3, 3-5-2 almost.
Yeah.
He allows Moxon to get a bit further forward, and I think that's actually not a bad thing, really. Get him a bit further up the pitch and affecting things up there. But there you go.
Yeah.
The other bit of news in terms of transfers, Jack Stretton, unfortunately, his loan has been ended early, so he can make a permanent move elsewhere. Yes, Derby County. Basically, there was a few murmurs about this, wasn't there, last time we recorded, Dan, and we weren't 100% sure whether they're true. Turns out they were. Derby County recalled him so he could sign for Stockport County on a permanent deal for an undisclosed fee. Now, we've been told from our sources, haven't we, Dan, that United did match that fee. I don't think it would have been a massive fee anyway because he's out of contract in the summer.
Yeah.
But essentially, we just couldn't match what Stockport offered in terms of wages. And I think he did okay. I mean, 23 appearances, 2 goals. Not a great return for a forward, but it was a bit more than goals from him, wasn't it, really? I would have liked to have seen him sign permanently because I think we could have developed him into a really good player. Would I have wanted us to bust the gut to bring him in? No, if I'm honest. But I don't know what your thoughts are.
Which leads me on to, we ummed and ahed about mentioning this, but it's fairly common knowledge. There is rumours we potentially have a replacement coming in. Hopefully this will be the one that gets announced after we record. Crystal Palace left-sided forward John Kaimani Gordon has seemingly agreed a deal. We've beat off several other clubs, Orient, MK Dons, Burton, Lincoln. This was reported on Twitter, and then if those who follow transfers on Twitter, which I know is a lot of you, Peter O'Rourke, who was ex-Sky Sports, and he does a lot. He actually tweeted this. When Peter O'Rourke tweets, it usually happens.
It's basically it happens.
We would suggest this is likely to happen unless something goes drastically wrong. I think would be the fairest sort of explanation.
100% expect him to be signed by the weekend, hopefully. And based on what I've seen, he's got a similar sort of style of play to Amari Patrick, hasn't he? He's got a bit of pace about him, likes to cut inside, hit his shots. I'd argue he looks like maybe an upgrade on Stretton from what I've seen so far.
I obviously, as soon as the rumours started about this lad, I sent a message to my mate Carl, big Palace fan, I know from England games, and he watches a lot of their under-21 games, etc. And he said this lad's really well rated. Been on the bench a couple of times. I think he had a bit of a bad injury a couple of years ago. If it wasn't for that injury, he would probably have been in around the first team a lot more. So I think Palace are just wanted him to go out and get some proper football, you know.
And a team that's doing well as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
we must also add that one of the people involved in the Palace Academy is a certain Sean Derry, who is friends with a certain Greg Abbott.
Again,
so,
his contacts paying dividend, aren't they? That's just the way it works.
If it happens, Yep.
Got to give a mention as well the fact that apparently he had a great game in pre-season against Botafogo. So that's Botafogo to Barrow, basically. He's going to be going in terms of opponents. What a journey he's going to go on. But there you go. Hopefully that one will be confirmed by then. Let's do a quick loan watch roundup then, Dan. We haven't done one obviously since I think before Christmas, wasn't it? I think the Northampton preview was the last one we did. Max Kilsby, he's made 2 extra appearances since then. He's up to 17, including one as a sub. And he's got a goal, hasn't he? Finally.
Yeah.
So, I think he's been playing at left back in recent games rather than centre back, possibly, because he's been wearing number 3. So, obviously, since we last got, so he's got himself a couple more appearances. That goal came in a 5-1 win over Albion Rovers just before Christmas. I went on YouTube to go and find this goal, I'll see what it was like. And they were 1-0 down at half time at home against Albion Rovers. And they were getting battered. How Albion were 4 or 5 up at half time, I don't know.
I very nearly went to this game and something came up so I couldn't. And I remember looking at the score and it was 1 down. I'm like, you know. And then I looked half an hour later, it was like 3 or 4-1. I'm like,
So it's basically, it was 1-0 at half time to Albion. They should have been much further ahead. And Aaron came out and battered them second half. Max got the 4th goal, I think. A bullet header from a corner. Really, really good header, to be fair, in him. And Yeah, great to see him doing so well with them. Unfortunately, they did lose the next game 2-0 against Forfar. They're currently fifth in the table, and the next up for them is probably I think the longest trip of the season for them. Would it be Elgin City away, right up on the north coast, I think, of Scotland, isn't it? Sort of northeast.
It's a good trip, northeast.
Northeast coast, isn't it? Based up that way. So there you go. Right, Lewis Bell, another 2 appearances for him as well, and similarly to Max, he got a goal in those 2 appearances. His goal came in a 1-0 win over Dalbeattie Star. That was followed up, though, with a 2-0 defeat at Stirling University. I think Stirling University in the next round of the Scottish Cup, I think. The first university side, I think, in Scotland to get that far in the Scottish Cup. I'm sure I read that somewhere. This weekend, they face a home tie with East Stirlingshire. Sam Fishburn. I think you highlighted this one to me, Dan, didn't you? I think you found the video of his appearance at the weekend. So Morpeth Town had gone on a run, I think, of 7 games without a goal. Sam ended that run, didn't he?
Didn't have.
Yeah, he got a goal in a 2-2 draw with Matlock Town. They did actually lose 1-0 against South Shields before this game. No shame in that, though, is it really? Because South Shields are
South Shields are the money club, aren't they?
Yeah, there was some fairly fruity language used, wasn't there? I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, if you go on the Morpeth Town Twitter and find, I think it must have been a fan recording it behind the goal, and there's some interesting industrial language as the goal scored. Quite funny.
It's fair to say that, isn't it? I think it's fair to say. Next up for them, they've got a home tie against Gainsborough Trinity this weekend. Lewis Boyd. I think his spell's come to an end at Carlisle City because they've only played 1 game since then, which was a 5-1 win at Whitley Bay. And he wasn't in net for that game. And Nick Townsley came back in for the Sky Blues, and he wasn't even on the bench. So if that's the end of his loan spell, I mean, 11 games at men's level football, good experience for him, isn't it, Dan, really? That's
that's all you can say. Yeah, good to help out one of the neighbours.
Yep. And then finally, Dan Hill. He's at Cleaton Celtic. It's incredible. All 4 of them scored that played this weekend, didn't they? Dan Hill got his first goal for Cleaton Celtic. It was only his second appearance. They only played 1 game over the Christmas period, unfortunately, because, again, like all the other games, weather really badly affected the fixtures. Unfortunately, it was a 4-2 defeat against Holker Old Boys, who were pushing for promotion in Clayton Celtic's division.
Is that classed as a derby in that league then, Holker?
I suppose it is, to be honest, because it's not actually that far, is it? It's a lot, it's a lot closer than most. So
probably still takes about 2 hours between the two.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, a really long time to get down there, but there you go. So 4-2 defeat. The next up for them is a home game against Steeton this weekend. Right, so that's the Loan Watch wrapped up then, Dan. Well, let's get on to listener questions then. So as you said, as what I said, sorry, at the start, no games to review this week. So that's because of the enforced break, thanks to Hartlepool's success, if you want to put it that way, in the FA Cup. Although they got battered by Stoke, didn't they, in the third round, sorry. Okay. We've opened the floor on social media to your Carl United questions for us to answer. I've put them all down into the running order. We're not necessarily going to answer them all, but explain why we won't answer some of them. We're going to try and answer as many as we can. We might combine a few of them together. I've sort of put them into categories to make it easier for us to find them, Dan. So we'll start off, shall we? Let's get straight into it. Let's do some of the ones are based on the current team, basically, these questions. So Luke Graham _95 on Instagram. He asked, if everyone is fit, what is your front three? And how many points do you think we'll need out of the last 22 games to go up automatically? Right, you can go first on this.
Front three is interesting because sometimes we play more of a 2.
Yeah.
So if we do have 2, I would say it's probably Dennis and Edmondson, but that's more as an old-fashioned 2.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was 3, I think you would probably have a Fitzpatrick on the left, Edmondson or Dennis up front, maybe replacing each other. And the right-hand side, if he's on his game, Jordan Gibson. But it depends if he's on his game, you know.
I think I'd agree with that. I don't think there's too much to disagree with there. It's difficult because Edmondson's done so well when he's come in, and he's played well on the left, actually. But I think on the top of his game, Patrick goes on the left, definitely. And like you said, on the right.
His pace alone, you know.
And then you almost flip a coin in terms of Dennis and Edmondson. I think Dennis, as much as he's got all his goals, Edmondson will suit some other games better because
I think some of it would depend. You know, I mean, if you're up against was it Walsall who had the big back line, I'd pick Edmondson to battle against them, you know, and then bring Dennis on with half an hour to go sort of thing. And there'd be other games where you would maybe start Dennis and bring Edmondson on, so they think, oh, Christ, not this for half an hour, you know.
Yeah, exactly that. And also it depends on whether Big John Kimani signs, doesn't it, really? If he signs,
someone else who was mentioned last week as well.
Well, yes, if Mr. Garner turns up, that one's still bubbling away as well. You never know with that one. We'll have to wait and see. He wasn't in the Fleetwood team against QPR. Wasn't even on the bench, and they had 9 subs available. So something's definitely bubbling there, I think it's fair to say. I'd agree with that in terms of the front three. In terms of the number of points we need from the last 22 games to go up automatically, it's a difficult one to judge because normally I think I'd say it's about the 78 mark, isn't it? I think roundabout the need. So that would mean we need probably
we're on 39 points in 24 games. I would suggest a similar performance wouldn't put us far off third place.
Yeah. I think that's.
So I think you're looking at 80. You're looking at 80. You're talking 41 points in 22 games.
It's a hard one to judge because Orient and Stevenage have been so phenomenally good this season.
Yeah.
You look at their records, it's quite incredible, actually, isn't it? It's interesting, actually. You look at it. We've scored we've scored more goals than both Stevenage and Orient.
Yeah.
In fact, the only team
their defences are excellent.
Yeah, the only team that's scored more goals than us is Northampton, and they played a game more. It should be said as well, actually. So we are quite a free scoring side this season. It's fair to say. I mean, certainly more than Gillingham, still on 7 goals. I mean, God, most people.
I would say a repeat of what we've done so far with an extra 3 points, and we would be there, I think.
Yeah, and I think we can do that if we keep the squad fairly strong. Right, Ross Parkinson, our good friend Ross, he's asked 3 questions, right? So we'll try and wrap through these quickly. Why are we as a fan base so obsessed with former players? He said, having just talked about potentially re-signing Joe Garner.
If we knew the answer to this, I'd be telling everyone Friday's Euro million numbers.
I don't think we're any different.
We are. I think we are.
I don't think we're any different to other clubs. You know, I know fans of some other clubs, and I know they're quite obsessed with some of their former players.
I suppose we're very Carlisle centric in our views because you know that's our team, and I'm not interested in who Crewe also want to re-sign, but there definitely is a few folk go a bit over the top.
I think there's a thing as well. We've been so isolated as a football club. We've known football clubs nearby. When a player comes to us and does well and is fairly loyal and, you know, looks committed to the club, we do take to them quite strongly, don't we? We do gain an affinity really there. So I can see that being part of the reason maybe, but, you know.
I think that as well. I think in the modern game, it's going a bit, that doesn't happen as much now. You know, when I first started watching football, players would play for 2, maybe 3 clubs in their career and that would be it. Now, by the time they're 25, they're playing for 10 clubs. Yeah. Because of loans, etc. So,
yeah, it's very different these days, isn't it, I suppose. Right, is next question best/worst Simo signing across both spells? Should we try and split this up into the 2 different spells? Maybe that might be the best way of doing this. So let's go for his first spell as manager. Who was his best signing and his worst signing then, Dan?
I think purely in the first spell. I'm moving an R in here. I mean, I would suggest you'd probably have to say purely on his goals, Carl Hawley.
Okay, so that's interesting because I think a lot of people go Michael Bridges because he's the one who took us to the next level.
Bridges is the obvious answer.
But I'm gonna not say Bridges either. Actually, I'm gonna say Kevin Gray for the impact he had. I was just going to say that there's a couple of defenders that you could be. My best, purely on goals, Carl Hawley for me. Yeah, for the goals and the amount he cost, you know, in terms of wage probably and you know, get him into the club. Hawley has to be up there as well. But for me, Kevin Gray, just for the impact he had in terms of the way he changed the professionalism around the squad. Because at that time, it's amazing to think it was nearly 20 years ago now, wasn't it? In fact, it's 20 years ago. What a shambles we were back then off the field. Yeah. Like the professionalism was at such a low level in terms of the playing squad, the way they were behaving, and he made a big difference. And his performances as well, all the way through until Simo left, he was outstanding, wasn't he? So yeah, Kev Gray for me. His worst in that spell, I'll go with Mark Rivers for the level of disappointment.
I will trade you Mark Rivers for Jamie McLean.
I feel like there was more expectation with Rivers because he came in mid-season when we were doing well, and there was a feeling like he could be that extra little spark to keep us up there, and he just didn't have the impact. McLean was, because he was brought on such a short-term deal as well. I don't think he was even brought on a season-long deal. I think it was half season.
I think he was a half season or something.
I don't think the expectation was quite there, but I do get it. I think there was a feeling of, McLean, he's played in the Premier League.
There wasn't many, to be fair, in that period.
No, I'm sure you could probably find some from the first season, possibly, who weren't quite as good. But, there's players who came in and did good, decent jobs, so there you go. In terms of his current spell, I would go best signing so far.
We've only really had the summer.
It's got to be, hasn't it?
We've only really had the summer, so Owen Moxon wins.
In
terms of worst, I think it's quite harsh.
Yeah,
I would say purely on the fact he's not really played because of injury, probably Ben Barkley. And that's not a slant at Ben Barkley. I get that. Circumstances have dictated because of his injuries. He's not really had a chance.
I'd say Sonny Hilton, and for Sims, it just hasn't. Not that he's been awful or dreadful, and it's a harsh way to say worse, but he just hasn't probably made the impact we'd hoped. He might fit in better somewhere else, but there you go. He's got another question about most likeable player in the squad. I mean, for me, it's got to be John Mellish, but we'll upset a few people by saying that because they don't like us saying that, do
we? I think, in terms of likability, I think Big Thomas Hall is up there.
Oh yeah, no, actually, it's a fair point. That's a very fair point, actually. Yeah,
he's very slick on his socials. He clearly loves it.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely.
It was good. It was good crack when you interviewed him. So I'd put Thomas up there.
No, spot on. I'll give you that one definitely. Right, let's move on. Craig Mattinson. He asked a question on Twitter. He said he wants to know our opinion on John Mellish in midfield. Stopgap or permanent solution? Me personally, it would only be to close the game out or in an emergency. But in recent weeks, it has been the go-to option. Defender all day long for me. I tend to agree. He's better in defence, but I think he's a much more controlled midfielder than he was under Beach. Under Beach, he was very much a nuisance battering ram option. But actually, when you watch him when he plays further up the field in the midfield now, he's definitely a lot better on the ball than he was. His first touch was dreadful when he was first.
For me, I think Craig sort of answered his own question there because for me, he is the left-sided defender and his runs out of defence are a big part of what we do. Equally, there are games where he has been pushed up into midfield, to change a tactic and it's worked, or to close a game out, etc. Yeah. So, defender for me, but no complaints as when he does play midfield.
Yeah, he's definitely got better in that role as well, definitely, I'd say that.
Yeah.
Beautiful Bass on Twitter. He's asked, how long do you lads think Simo will be at Carlisle? If he continues to do well, other clubs will take note, and despite being a Cumbrian, money can be very persuasive. Also, while he's here, should someone like Granger, Jansen, Bridges, etc. be brought in with an eye to the future? Well, first up, in terms of how long do you think he'll stay? I think he'll stay a lot longer this time. I don't think it's going to be quite as persuasive to go to a bigger club, because I think it's a little bit once bitten, twice shy, isn't it, with this one, would you say?
He's also done a lot in the game this time round. We're talking nearly 20 years, nearly, he has moved house a lot. He's said that in interviews, maybe now is the time to start putting your roots back down as you move through the later stages of your career, etc.
He's 57 this year, isn't he, I think? And he's obviously had the health scare as well that we all know about.
Which something like that certainly makes people reflect on a lot of things in life. We all know people who've had illnesses and scares, etc. And you reevaluate a lot of stuff, don't you? And,
we're putting words a little bit into his mouth here, but I think he's been quite clear that he's very happy, and he's there was a lot of talk of Derby potentially being interested in this, and nothing came. I'm sure other clubs will have shown interest, but I think it helps that he's so well liked here as well. I genuinely think that makes a difference. I think he's got to the stage now where he's been at other clubs, he's got abuse, and it does help sometimes. I know he says, look, if I get bad results, I'll be out. But I think he also knows he'll be given a lot more time here than he would any other club.
I could actually see him becoming Greg Abbott in a few years.
Yeah, possibly.
I think Greg's a couple of years, 2.5 years older than him.
Yeah,
But obviously Greg's not from the area.
yeah.
So, Greg's loving doing the job at the moment. Will that last forever? Who knows? There could be a time when Paul Simpson sort of does move more into that position.
Yeah.
But hopefully not for a while yet, because we've got
Yeah.
a championship to get into.
Exactly. And the question about in terms of bringing someone like a Granger, Janssen or Bridges in, I think there's always a danger with that. You want to get someone locally involved. You've already got someone like Gavin Skelton there. He's a local lad. And you know what? Several managers have been in now. And I know there's all talk, the club, if a manager really came in and said, look, I want my own assistant in, the club would get rid of Skelton. That's the way the world works. Yeah, that's just the reality of it. Every manager who's come in has been quite happy to work with him, and Simo talks really highly of him. Maybe we need to look at him. Maybe he's potentially been the one who's trained up to actually take on the management role when Simo decides he's had enough, hopefully in a decade's time, or something like that. I don't know. For me, Granger's much better off staying at Reds at the moment and learning about being a manager there and trying to get them.
Speaking of Granger, there was a whisper that he may have been in the running for the Queen of the South job in the last couple of weeks. Nothing came of that because they've appointed someone. But...
Marvin Bartley, they've appointed, who was
yes,
linked
it
to
was
our
Marvin
job, wasn't
Bartley.
he?
Yeah,
I think last time around, when Millen got it. So there you go. So yeah, that's that one covered. Phil J. Hind, who's my cousin's partner actually, he said, "How do you think we'll get on next season if we go up the Blues?" And we're not going to answer that one, Phil, because we don't want to tempt fate.
Champions.
Well, we'll piss that shitty league is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
Basically, we're not going to answer that one because we do not want to tempt fate. We still got promotion to win it this season. So there you go. Jim Owen on Twitter, he's asked, what do the lads think of the transfer activity so far in and out, the rumours of incoming, and who would they like to bring in if given the chance? We won't answer this one this week, Jim, because what we'll do is we'll talk more about transfers in the coming weeks, I think.
We did sort of give our opinion on the McCalmont and the possible Palace lad, so we have half covered that.
So we have covered that, but we'll start to cover that later in the window. We'll also start looking at some of the League Two transfers because there's been some really interesting ones. I mean, the work Gillingham have done so far, blimey, I think they've given themselves a good chance of staying up, definitely, with the money they've spent. Finally, in terms of the current played one, CUFC Andy on Twitter has asked, who do you think has been the best team we've played this season, home or away? Tough one, this one. I mean,
I was quite impressed by Stockport.
Yeah.
Because we were poor, but they played well, and they were quite lowly in the league at the time.
They controlled that game. That's the thing that impressed me with that.
Yeah.
They certainly, they played some really good stuff. I mean, it's interesting, when we played Crewe at home, they were actually okay. It was a bad game, but they didn't look too bad a team. It's a tough one to judge because neither of us have been seeing all the teams. I think there's some of the teams that neither of us have seen. I mean, Orient were just for that first half an hour or so, were such an efficient side in the way they played.
Well, we deserved a point off them, whereas Stevenage beat us comprehensively earlier in the season.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. So, I think we both agree Stockport County. And I think we're both in agreement that we expect them to be in the playoffs, I think, come the end of the season, at the minimum. I wouldn't be amazed to see them shoot past us and go into the top three, to be honest, because they've made some strong signings in the January transfer window. Right, let's talk about past players. We're talking about former players and stuff like that, obsessions. Lewis Rids on Instagram has asked, which player we've been linked with over the past years do you most wish we'd signed?
There is only one answer to this question.
Player X?
And that is Player X.
Mark
For those who aren't aware, back in the glory days of the Footy Mad Forum, when John Courtney had the club, there was a rumour that Player X was going to sign, and he was a Republic of Ireland international, etc. It turned out that the Player X was allegedly Mark Kinsella, who was at Aston Villa at the time. And for whatever reason, it never happened. I think he actually went to Walsall. Not long after.
Actually,
I think we were maybe linked in this sort of time, January.
Was he at Colchester, maybe? Somewhere like that, I think, possibly. I can't remember.
Yeah, but he went to Walsall from Villa.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I'm gonna put two out there that I'm thinking of. One of them is Peter Beardsley, the second time round, in the late 90s, and there was rumours of him. Well, Knighton nearly did sign him, didn't he? There was a photo of him shaking hands.
And then he went to Hartlepool.
Yeah, instead. So that just because my dad always talks about how good a footballer he was, and neither of us got to see him play for Carl United, so it would have been amazing to see him play even in the twilight of his career. And the other one was one that was linked to one of the great Carl United rumours of all time, the alleged takeover by Robert Wiseman Dairies of the club. And the rumour that Ali McCoist was going to come in as player manager. Yeah. I mean, just because at that time, he was still a hell of a good player, McCoist, at that point, wasn't he? So that would have been very exciting. So that's the one I always think, that would have been quite exciting, wouldn't it? But other than that, it's hard because there's so many different names get thrown about, and you don't know how serious some of the rumours are, do you? So yeah, that's the case with that one, I think. Right.
No. I'm going to say jump here because that leads us on to Andrew McTurnan's question.
Yes. Oh, no, that's a good point, actually, yeah. So Andrew McTurnan on Instagram has asked, he says, as a Geordie, he says his grandma and mum were both from Carlisle and a Newcastle fan. I'll ask a NUFC Carlisle-related question. If you could have only one, who would you rather, Peter Beardsley or Michael Bridges in your Carlisle United team?
Well, I'm probably going to annoy most of our listenership, and I would plump for Beardsley.
I'd agree.
Purely, don't get me wrong, Michael Bridges was brilliant at this football club, but due to his injuries, he never quite got to his full potential, I think.
No.
Whereas Peter Beardsley was verging on elite level.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up watching the likes of Peter Beardsley playing for Liverpool, Newcastle, and he was different gravy.
Yeah, he was.
He really was. He was.
Like, if you've got to go back and watch some of the great footage of him playing, and you'll see just how good a player he was, really, from his early years. But I mean, I said that his early years, that Newcastle United entertainers side of the early to mid '90s, he played a big part in that as well. To be fair, he was still a great player then. So there you go. So yeah, I think I'd agree with you. I'd go with Beardsley as much as I love Michael Bridges from his time with us.
Yeah.
As well as that, just because I've never got to see him play for Carlisle, it would have been great to see it again. But there you go. Kyle Dixon on Twitter. He's also asked, is there any past Carlisle player that you didn't rate highly at the time that they were here, but looking back now, past clips or whatever, you appreciate more now and wish you had realised how good they were or how important they were to the team back then when they were playing here? Any you can think of, Dan?
Not much. I'll tell you, a bit of a weird one. I always thought Westwood was a decent keeper. It was only when he started playing for likes of Chef Wed in the Championship he showed what a good keeper he was, if that makes sense.
I think his best season was his final season with us, and I think the other seasons he was good, but he was never quite at the extraordinary levels he got to in that last season. That's the difference.
And that's not to say I think he was terrible for us. By no level was he terrible for us. I think it was one of those, the only ones he moved up to the leagues that I thought, bloody hell, he is a player, you know.
Yeah. I mean, John McGill loved me mentioning this one, but it's not one I didn't rate at the time, but Paul Thirlwell, when you look back now and how good he was, and the problem is he didn't play enough games because he was injured a lot of the time, but how good he actually was in that Carlisle team and how he made them tick at times and how the role he did, you kind of appreciated once he sort of dropped off and started to struggle and, wasn't quite the same level he was before in his final season. You kind of start to realise, actually, he was a very good player for us, wasn't he? I think that's one case with him. It's one I'd need to have a bit more of a think about, that one, Kyle, actually, because I'd have to go and look back at some teams and look at some of the squads and think, actually, you know what, he was a good player because there've been so many players for us down the years. You lose track a little bit. But there you go. Mike Collier, well, I'll put this one in, even though John Coleman's answered this one for us. He said, simply only one question asked. This is Mark Collier. Was David Curry's goal of the season against Rochdale in 94-95 wind assisted? John Coleman answered, saying, I'll answer that one. The wind was Curry assisted. I don't know about this one. I always think it was. I think it is a little bit windy. I mean, the weather that night was horrendous, wasn't it? From what I remember, the one against. Oh no, actually,
what happened was, as he hit the ball, he flicked his mullet, and it created a mini tornado, which helped the ball.
That brings us on to a question coming up soon as well. Actually, to be fair, that's your answer for that one, Mark. Martin Robson, who's lad Craig, who's a regular contributor to the 60-second reviews. His question. What's your strangest ever encounter with a current/former player, i.e. supermarket, nightclub, bookies, obscure holiday destination? Dan, you've told me you can't answer this one because you get player in trouble.
There is a couple that I can't. Not nothing terrible, but just it wouldn't be fair because I was mates with a couple of players at the time. I mean, the thing with Carlisle is with a lot of players now tend not to live here, so it's less likely to see them. I can't think of any really obscure ones. You know,
the only ones I can think of, I'd say Clint Hill. I've had train cans with. I say train cans with. It was in the same carriage as me. We were going back to Liverpool. And I've seen him at Lime Street Station actually as well on his way up to Carlisle when I was on my way into work one day. And Jeff Thorpe in the chippy after a Carlisle game in Cockermouth. That's about as good as I get, I'm afraid, mine. If any listeners have got any,
I've got a good one involving Graham Anthony, who I know quite well. I remember once when the team used to have a Wednesday night out in Buskers, bumping into Graham Anthony walking home with his kebab, and he was a touch drunken, shall we say, and me and another fella convinced him that red cabbage in a kebab was evil. So he walked down the road picking all the red cabbage out on his way back home, which was brilliant.
Superb stuff. Right, up next, Fish Island Blues. He's given us 3 questions, right? What I'm going to do is we'll answer some of the ones that are on another time. And let's look at the... Should we do the middle question, Dan? I think that's the best one to do, the 3 he's given us. So, of his 3 questions, the one we're going to answer is which game /moment/player or season made you Cal United through and through, and why? I mean, for me, 94-95 season, because the first one I went, and it was just incredible. And it was that game against Bury, the 3-0 win. It was my first ever game, and you couldn't really pick a better first ever game to go to. We got in at 1:30 to make sure we got into the game, because obviously it ended up being... They didn't do all ticket back then for a lot of the games, so... Basically, you had to make sure you got in early, and it was first against second on the 27th of December, was it, I think? Sat on that, you know where the gate is at the top end of where the Warwick meets the paddock? Sat on the wall at the front down there, and I remember this fella coming up to... I had my programme, and Dad's like, give it to him, and he scribbles his name on it, and I was like, who's he? He's like, Mick Wadsworth. He's the manager. So that was incredibly exciting, and I mean, just for the atmosphere and everything about it, that got me hooked. So that's the answer for me. It's as simple as that. For you, Dan?
My first season was 85-86.
I got relegated.
We got relegated in my first 2 seasons, and then in the third one finished 23rd out of 24. So, but I remember it was my third or fourth match of the season, and it was my first. I think it was my first Tuesday night game. No, I'd done the Palace game definitely. I'll have to recheck my footballology. But I remember we played Oldham at home on a Tuesday night in 85, September, just back at school. Big thing going to a midweek match because I was only 7.5. And we beat Oldham 3-1. I was sat on the wall at the front of the Warwick. I can remember Andy Gorham was in goal for Oldham. And it was just, Oldham just seemed some sort of magical team to me for some unknown reason. And we beat them 3-1 under the floodlights, and I was just like, yeah, I like this. I like coming here. Yeah. And that was me. The next 2.5 seasons were utterly shite. But apart from that, yeah.
Do you know who the goal scorers were that day?
Oh, not off the top of my head. I'd have to have a look.
It was a brace for Hill and a goal for Gavin. I don't know who Gavin is, actually. I'm trying to work it out, that. So you probably know that better than me, to be honest. Let me just double check the names on this. I'm very quickly looking through here which play it was. I think it would be Andy Hill.
Andy Hill.
Yeah.
And it's Mark Gavin.
Is it Mark
Who
Gavin?
was a winger from Leeds from memory.
Yes, only played 12 games, scored 2 goals.
Yeah, he didn't play many games.
Yeah, so Mark Gavin, absolutely right there. Well done, Dan, for knowing that before I managed to find it in the complete record. So there you go. That's our answer to your questions, Fish Island Blues. Thank you very much for those. The next ones are all about stadium/money, so I'm going to try and combine all these 3 into one almost. So Aldi Disco Pants on Instagram. Great Instagram name, that, by the way. You get gifted $3 million to spend on the club. What do you do with it? Now, I'm presuming you have to spend it on the club. You can't do anything else. That's what it's for. Tim Martland asks, assuming we had the money, how would you improve/develop Brunton Park? Would you ever consider a new ground? And Sam Johnston on Twitter as well asks, if money was no option, where would you build a new stadium for the club and what would it be like? So do you want to try and answer these in one go, Dan,
right,
if possible?
Assuming the $3 million has to be spent on the club itself, i.e. not repaying the debt.
Yeah.
Obviously, repaying the debt would be number one, but we'll take that out of the equation. I would, first of all, if we could stay at Brunton Park and all the surveys show that this is possible, well, then that's the ultimate for me. If so, I would knock down the waterworks end.
Yeah.
And I would at least move the grass up a bit and look to be building I mean, it would be more than 3 million, but certainly putting the steps in place to build a small stand behind the goal of 1,500, 2,000, which would then become the away end, and obviously have it in line with the east stand. It would probably cost more than any 3 million, but certainly some of that 3 million could be done into the flattening and preparation. I just think it would tidy the ground up immensely. Trying to think what else you would do.
I'm presuming your 3 million's out now. I'm presuming you spent all that.
Probably is, to be fair.
So in terms of if you could, let's answer Sam's question quickly. If you could move the ground anywhere, basically, obviously presuming Brunton Park's not an option anymore, where would you go to?
I did like the idea that was floated of down where the car parks are by the railway line.
I always think the thing is, if you moved Brunton Park into that on the map and you put it there, to say it's tight is an understatement. It's access
tight,
would be very difficult as well. That's the one problem
but
as well.
I think it's doable with a bit of ingenuity. And believe me, I've sat on night shifts at work and thought about this many times in the quiet hours of the night.
Also, it should be pointed out, you're just moving from one flood risk to another when you go there. That's the problem, isn't it?
There's ways and means. It's 2023. There's ways and means.
I know. Basically, you design your bottom stand, the bottom of your stands to basically be shells, don't you? That's what you do. Like what it should be now. You put it back.
One thing that would give would be one of the biggest advertising hoardings in the world, beside the West Coast Main Line.
Indeed,
where trains are travelling slowly because they're coming into and out of Carlisle.
Yeah, that's very true. It's a very good point, that.
Revenue.
Exactly. In terms of the 3 million for me, I wouldn't focus on the waterworks. I'd probably knock down the main stand, controversially, and build a new one in the same style with the terracing at the front. Don't you Padakites worry. I'm with you on that one. But I'd sort of redo and sort of have the seats above. But what I'd do is I'd have like a tunnel, almost... not tunnel, sorry. I'd basically build the bottom bit into almost a big social club bar style thing.
If I had unlimited money, we'll put a couple of zeros on this 3 million.
Yeah.
I would look to potentially turn the ground round 90 degrees.
Not the worst.
It would be a hell of a job, and you would obviously have to buy some land off a rugby club and come to agreements and that.
You'd probably have to ground share for a few years somewhere, probably as well. But
Tottenham managed it pretty much, apart from it at Wembley.
Yeah, I suppose we could.
I think it'd be possible.
Yeah, I suppose we could go down to Morecambe for a couple of years, couldn't we? Maybe or something like that.
No, we'd just play in a 2-part stadium.
Well, you never know. No, that's an interesting way of looking at it. There you go. I think we try to answer that as much as possible. Basically, we'd love to stay at Brunton Park. In terms of where I'd move it to, other than that viaduct option, the only option I can think of, but the problem is it's quite a bit out of town, is where they're going to build a new southern bypass. Morton, somewhere down that way. Somewhere different. But the problem is you're moving it so far away from where it is.
Any move now, there's pretty much not many options due to traffic, etc. So
that's the challenge. But there you go.
You would be looking at somewhere by the motorway or one of the bypasses.
Yeah, definitely.
Which isn't ideal, but
no, absolutely not. Okay, that's the stadium sort of money questions answered. CFC 11 sort of five-a-side. Now we've had a few questions on this. One question was asking us for our basically what is our all-time 11s, but we've already covered one of those. We've covered your 11, haven't we, Dan? Actually, already. We need to do mine. I keep saying this. I don't think I've even finished writing it down. I sort of I started it and then I started thinking, no, I don't want him in. I don't want that in. So I'll have to go back and have a look and see who I'd put in. But yeah, we've basically been asked for our all-time Carl United five-a-side. Someone's asked for a five-a-side based on the last 10 years, and
I think the five-a-side team would come out your best 11, wouldn't it? That would be the
not necessarily, because if you're basing it around how you play a five-a-side game, it may be different players you'd have in there possibly. So, and someone else also, Matthew Clark, asked us for free current / past Cal United players to join us free in a Brunton Bugle 6-side team. Now, problem with that is I need to know what kind of player Mike is, because I've never played football with Mike. I've played with you a few times, Dan, and we're fairly similar players, aren't we?
You want to rephrase that? You played football with me.
Clip that one. Yeah, we played football together a few times, so I know what kind of player you are. We're fairly similar players, actually, so it'd be a difficult one to work out that. We'll come back to those on a later episode, maybe, because they need a bit more depth than we've got in terms of time right now. Let's go through some of the funny other ones now then. First up, our good mate Nick Brown on Facebook. He's asked, favourite pre-match away pub that you've done and our dream pre-season friendly home or away. So I'll let you go first on this one, Dan.
One of my favourite away pubs is always the Coach and Horses at Leighton Orient. It's just, I don't know why, it's a bit of a shithole. I've actually stopped in the Coach and Horses for a week, work-related, in between digs.
Yeah. No, I think I don't 100% agree with you on that one. I think I'd go with the Coach and Horses.
Also linked to that, usually normally have a couple in the Hamilton Hall Weatherspoons before going over to Orient, and it always depends whether West Ham or Tottenham are at home, what the sort of patronage is. You know, if Tottenham are home, it'll be Tottenham everywhere. If West Ham are home, there'll be a lot of West Ham. And there's usually one or two away fans, and there's always quite a good atmosphere and a mix at the. So I would say the Hamilton Hall at Liverpool Street in London, going on to the Coach and Horses, and just Orient's just one of them top away days, isn't it?
Yeah,
always is.
There's a couple of really good pubs actually near Liverpool Street Station, to be fair, that are well worth doing. And you know, I like doing as well. It's weird. It's not a pre-game, I suppose, pub actually. It's supposed a post-match when we go to London. I love going to the Euston Tap as well. If you've got time, grab a quick pint there. Anyone doesn't know where the Euston Tap is, if you come out the main entrance at Euston, there's a big sort of. It's where the old arch was, isn't it, Dan? I think, with the station back in the day. And there's this pub. It's a weird pub because it's a tiny little room inside, but there's loads of people like drinking commuters, isn't there? Usually waiting on their journey back in the evening. Yeah. That's a cracking wee pub. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the cemetery as well in Rochdale is a great one.
Yeah, that's always a popular one.
Should be frequenting in a couple of weeks' time, I'm hoping. Yes, I think I'd agree with that. Coach and Horses at Orient.
Pre-season friendly. I'd love us to do a proper tour abroad.
Yeah.
I'm not bothered where, you know, there's plenty of options. Scandinavia would be good, 2 or 3 games.
I mean, I think you can probably tell where I'd want us to go and play a pre-season tour, Dan. I'd love it, just Berlin. Let's do some clubs. Let's play Hertha or Union, but play all the smaller clubs, a few smaller clubs.
I'd say Hamburg, obviously. But, there's anywhere abroad for a week would just be brilliant.
Yeah. In terms of home, I'm not really fussed, to be honest. I don't get that excited about home pre-season games anymore. Just, you know, it's almost a bit of a chore sometimes. That's the problem, but there you go. Yep, so thanks for that one, Nick. Dorsey on Twitter, he's asked our favourite home and favourite away game. I mean, home games, favourite ones. I like the games again. I mean, the games against Preston have always been quite good down the years, haven't they? If we're talking about general games or rather than a specific match that's happened, yeah, I'd probably say Preston from the ones I've actually experienced, to be fair. They've always been good ones. In terms of favourite away games, we always say Orient, but
Rochdale's always a good one, isn't it? You know, I've always quite enjoyed Fulham until we got beat 5-0 on the Easter Monday in '98 off them.
I've never seen us play out Fulham, but I've been there for a game, and it is a crack. It's a lovely day out by the Thames.
That 3-1 win in '94 was one of my all-time favourite away games. It's just brilliant. Yeah. What's your favourite sort of home game, would you say, then? I like anywhere there's a decent crowd. You know, I mean, you know, my main 90s, we played Preston, Wigan, Burnley all the time. You know, and there was always an atmosphere, a good crowd, a good away following. I loved them, you know, and that's why it annoys me that we're so low in the league. Yeah. Well, hopefully we're playing Wigan next season in League One. Yeah, the way it's going. First ever trip to the DW, that's what we're dreaming of. Will Stevenson on Twitter, he's asked top 3 Carlisle home games and away games you've attended. We'll try and do this quickfire. Do you want to have a quick go and quickfire that one? Away, I've obviously mentioned Fulham. Yep. That was brilliant. Do we class Wembley as an away game? Stretching it, but first time coming out of Wembley is special, regardless. I'd have to have a proper think about this. I really would. Because I could say 3 today, and then I'd probably change it tomorrow apart from Fulham.
Yeah. Okay, well, for my 3 away games, I'm going to go straight out the 5-0 win at Darlington. Incredible. Hilarious watching that fat guy getting chucked out in the home end at the Reynolds Arena. Second, I'm surprised you didn't pick this one because you scored in this game. The 1-0 win at Chester. Absolute dreadful game of football, but for those few minutes at the end, it was the most incredible feeling, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That 1-0 win.
Scunthorpe 3-2 we were terrible for 80 minutes, but the last 15 and the atmosphere at the end.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a good performance, does it? That's the thing. As well as that, so I've picked those 2, and then it's a straight fight between 2 different trips to Mansfield, either the one where we won promotion with the 1-1 draw, with Hawley's late goal, or the 3-2 win where, we went down a week later against Cheltenham, but the feeling when Glennon saved that penalty was unbelievable. That's got to be up there as one of the best moments as a Carlisle fan. And in terms of home games, well, I've got to say the 3-0 win against Bury, my first game.
Bury's definitely up there.
Bury's got to be up. I think we both agree on that one, don't we? Yeah. Other ones, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I really enjoyed that 2-1 win over Huddersfield a few years back when Miller got that late goal, just because I thought we played some brilliant football that day against a really good team.
Huddersfield, when we put 4 past them in the trophy, that was a good night.
It was a good night, to be fair, yeah. But I just think that league game, because I just thought at that point, yes, we can make the playoffs.
Leeds 3-1. That's a great home game.
Oh, yeah. Leeds 3-1 as well. So they're my 3.
Do you know something? I don't think I could pick 3.
Yeah. It's hard,
I really don't, yeah.
It's hard. We'll have to start doing a greatest games podcast. Talk about the great games down the years, won't we? Right, okay.
Well, we could do them in sort of 90s, 0s, 10s.
We could do, definitely. Ryan Hogarth on Facebook, he's asked us our favourite ever chant about a player. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head. Can you think of a
I think some people would suggest the Chris Billy song.
Yes, but we won't repeat that because it's got some particular lyrics. I like a bit of Jabbo's on Fire, basically. Just the excitement of it. I'd have to have a think about that one because I'd have to go back and look through players' names because I forget the chants from yesteryear sometimes. Don't I?
Yeah.
Tough one to remember. Ryan Devlin, who would be your dream CUFC guest to get on the podcast? Well, we've talked about this before, haven't we, Mike?
There's only the main one for me would be Michael Knighton.
Yeah, just to ask him some questions, and we'd be fair with him, and we'd be tough, but we'd be fair. We want to ask the questions about what happened towards the end because we went to that. We went to the evening with, didn't we, at the old fire station? Yeah. And it was good, but there was far too much time spent on his trying to take over Man United. Yeah, I think about 60-70% of it was on that.
Yeah, it was more surrounding his book coming out to me.
Yeah, it's one thing I would have said to the compare was you could have hurried him up a little bit on that because he rambled a bit too much on that. So yeah, it'd probably be him. There's a couple more, but we're trying to line them up as guests, so I don't really want to mention them. So it's been a difficult one trying to organise them, but yeah, they're probably the ones I'd pick, I'd say. Right, what's next? Chris Kendall, top 5 away kits. Should we not do this one? Because we still need to do a history of the away kits, don't we? We've done a history of the home kits, so that's one we've got to do in the future. So Chris...
when we do the away kits, we'll give our views on the best and worst.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we'll definitely be doing that one. I love this one. Jack Oddy on Twitter has asked, top 5 Carlisle player haircuts, please, lads. Well, this brings us back to David Curry, doesn't it? The finest mullet ever to grace the Brunton Park pitch, isn't it?
Basti and Herry has to get in for his hair colours.
So that's Curry and Herry definitely in there.
Rod Thomas and Rob Peters, when they had their sort of mini dreads going on, was
that's one haircut combined there, isn't it? So that they've Rod Thomas, David Curry, Basti and Herry. It's hard to say because there's not been that many exciting ones, I suppose, has there really? No, I can't think of any. They're the 3 best, definitely, anyway, so we'll stick with them for now. Greg Bullman on Twitter. Obviously, you know mine, but do you have any pre-match superstitions regarding the Blues? Obviously, Greg's pre-match superstitions we revealed, I think, last week or a couple of weeks ago, was the apple sour shot before a game, which he's done this season with him and Matty. And every time they've both done it together in the pub before a game, we've won the game or we haven't lost. so there you go.
I don't.
No, I when I'm getting ready on the morning of a game, I'll go into my sock drawer, and if I'm lucky Carlisle United socks are there, I'll put them on. But if it's a really cold game, I've got a pair of Saint Etienne coloured, their shirt coloured socks that I'll put on. But
They don't sound very nice.
I know they're nice. They're very nice socks. Actually, I'll show you. I'll show you a nice picture of them afterwards. Dan.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't really, to be honest. No, there's no massive superstitions, Greg.
I mean, when I was younger, teenager, meeting mates and that, I would always meet in the same place at the same time. But it wasn't superstition; it was just our route. It was routine more than anything.
Does having a battered sausage with chips and gravy from the home and away chippy after the game count as a superstition? Because if it does, I've been doing that for a while. Believe me.
You won't be doing that anymore because it is a chippy no more.
What?
Yeah, I walked past last week and I went, oh, home and away's up for that. I looked through the window. All the stuff has gone.
I'm devastated. Yeah. You've ruined my weekend, Dan. Thanks very much.
They must have literally done it overnight.
Oh, I think it was always busy. I always have to go home and away now. It's never quite as good.
The chippy round the corner, though, at the top of Botchergate, does a decent patty. So
I'll probably end up going home and away now. Anyway, enough chippy talk. We've got a couple more questions to do, and a couple of them are taking the mickey, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. Who is your favourite awful player, like a player who was really bad for us? That's a really good question, actually. Because you do take a liking sometimes to a player who's bad, who's not that good. I'd probably say Tony Hemmings. I really like Tony Hemmings. Get up and down the pitch. He wasn't the greatest player in the world, but...
I quite liked Richard Offiong.
Oh, God.
But I think he had problems off the pitch.
Yeah, I don't think he was ever happy at that point.
Yeah, which aren't a laughing matter.
I think he'd basically fallen out of love with the game by that point. Which is sad, really. But there you go. I think the late 90s, early noughties has got some great candidates for this, and I'd put Tony Hemmings up there definitely. I think he was one of my favourites at that time. So yeah, I'd probably go with... I like Richard Tracy as well. That's a confession to make to you. I don't think he was ever as bad a player as he made out to be. And I remember back in the early days of the internet, we were quite good friends with his brother on like the older chat functions and things like that. And lovely fella, and like I said, really nice people, but just never quite worked out for him at Carl United. So there you go. And very quickly, another one this is from Ticket Addict, I should say, on Twitter, these two questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good/bad has Jenkins been for the club? That's a difficult one to comprehend, this one, I think. If you're saying 1's bad and 10's good, I'd put him as a sort of... People may disagree, I'd say a 6.
Due to my role in kiosk, I'm not going to answer this question.
Fair point.
I don't think it'd be fair.
Fair point. No, that's a fair point. I'd say 6. I think yes, he's made mistakes in that, but I think it's all come from a good place, and his heart's in the right place. That's the way I'd look at it. So there you go. That's a fair point, Dan. You can't really answer that question. And then finally, this is a question from Ticket Addict, followed up by one from David Noble. Ticket Addict says, "Are you planning on an interview with John Halpin to mark 10 years since he retired?" And David Noble says, "Will Chris Brunskill 40 years service episode be out before the John Halpin one?" All right, you pair of smart asses. The funny thing is, the episode's going to be out by the time you listen to this. So up yours. It's been done. It's ready to go. It's going out on Thursday evening. So there you go. So yes. So stop being clever. But yeah, thank you everyone for your questions. Really appreciate all them. We've managed to pack them all in as it is. Some of them are going to be covered elsewhere. But there you go. So we're going to take a short break now, and then we'll be back in the second half of the show to look ahead to the Newport game.
Hi, I'm Thomas Holy, and you are listening to Brunton Bugle.
Okay, Dan, that's the first half of the show all done. We're into the second half now, and we're going to be looking ahead to the Newport County game this weekend. It's nice to be back in action, isn't it, really, after that enforced 2-week break. But yeah, it should be an interesting one, this one, I think. Notts County, a side that not in the worst form in the world. They're not lost in the last 4, but they've also won in 5.
Can I just say,
yeah,
Notts County are top of the National League. You mean Newport County?
Newport County, dear God. I'm not even going back and changing that again, right? That's a mistake that's staying in there. So there you go. Newport County, I do apologise. Notts County would be an interesting game, wouldn't it? Very unexpected. Yes, as usual, the start second half, we've got the behind enemy lines section. This week, we spoke to Ed from the 1912 Exiles Newport County podcast. I think we spoke to Ed earlier in the season, actually, so it's a bit of a familiar voice. What did we chat about? We chatted about their struggles since Mike Flynn's departure, including another change of manager this season, 2 long-serving players leaving this January, and how Ozzy Zanzala is getting on in South Wales after finally recovering from his injury. So here's a chat I had with Ed earlier this week. So after that long Christmas break, we are indeed back with the Behind Enemy Lines section of the podcast, where we talk to a fan from an away podcast or an away blog or forum or something like that about how their team's going on, the team we're playing this weekend. And this weekend, of course, we're playing Newport County, which means we're talking to Ed from the 1912 Exiles Newport County podcast. Ed, how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Looking forward to a long drive up to Carlisle on Saturday.
We were just discussing this before we started recording here. You're coming up with your eldest, I do believe, for the game this weekend. And it's one of those rites of passage for a low league fan, isn't it? You've got to do the longest away trip you possibly can at some point. And for most fans down south, that's going to be Carlisle, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've never been to Brunton Park before. And a few years ago, my eldest, who's 10... said, what's the furthest away that Newport play? And I said, I don't know, it's probably Carlisle. And he went, great, can we go? And then COVID and all sorts has kept getting in the way. And so, finally now I think we will hopefully make it, as long as the weather doesn't get in the way or the M6 tailbacks or whatever, we should be there. So, looking forward to seeing what it's like.
Well, thankfully, the Brunton Park pitch is in good nick these days. So generally... Good. Wet weather doesn't affect it. It's cold weather, that's not to worry about. But I don't think the weather's supposed to get too cold this weekend. Fingers crossed. So we'll wait and see. But let's get into it. Let's talk about Newport County then. So we're halfway through the campaign. What's your thoughts on your season so far? Because I mean, over recent seasons, you've sort of been the perennial sort of bridesmaid in the playoffs, haven't you? In a few of those seasons, you've just missed out on promotion. Last season, you dropped off a little bit. But this campaign's not been great. I think you've not been in the top half since I think the opening day of the season.
Yeah, it's been it already feels like a long season, and it's only January. You know, it's one of those. There was a slight feeling that perhaps we'd overachieved for several years in a row, getting to playoff finals or flirting with the playoffs. And in fact, last season I think we were briefly in the automatic places for around sort of the turn of the year. But things tailed off towards the end of the season last year. Although perhaps we didn't necessarily realise at the time, I think in retrospect we didn't have a great summer transfer window. Yeah. We failed to bring in reinforcements in key areas, especially midfield, which we'll probably talk about. Yeah. And then, we started the season with high ideals, wanting to play good football before realising that we didn't necessarily have the personnel to do that, and we were getting overrun by teams and out-muscled by teams. And very sadly, it saw our manager, James Rowbury, sacked in October sort of time. The fans were really sad about that. He was a Newport boy. He was the golden child of the Football Association of Wales. You know, he's sort of the youngest man to get all of his coaching badges and seemed to have the world at his feet. But it didn't work out for him. And with a heavy heart, we let him go. I think it was the right choice, but it did leave a bad taste in everyone's mouths. And then since then we made a pragmatic decision. We brought in Graham Coughlin, who managed at Bristol Rovers and Mansfield, amongst others. He is a kind of arch pragmatist, and he has come in and steadied the ship. You know, the remit he was given was keep us up, which I think he will do. But we're not pretty to watch, it has to be said. But we will work away and grind out results. We aren't winning loads of games, but we're very difficult to beat, I think, is the consensus. So we're already at the point in January where we're kind of going, we're going to finish somewhere kind of 15th, 16th, 17th, somewhere around there. You know, we won't be in a relegation scrap, but we won't ever get the opportunity to dream of even challenging for playoffs. So it already feels like we're just kind of treading water till May. But given where we were in October, November, I think probably most of us would settle for that, as long as we can improve the playing style over the next 6 months and kind of evolve into a more attractive team to watch next year.
Well, it's a great first answer, that, because you've covered my next two questions pretty much. I was going to ask you about James Rowbury, and because obviously last time you were on, you guys were saying you were keen to give him time, saying he was a local lad, really wanted him to do well. I mean, I think you've pretty much told me what went wrong there, basically, in that he was trying to play a style that just didn't suit you, and you had to make the pragmatic decision in going for Coughlin. Coughlin's an interesting one because he comes into you guys, and he had a fairly decent record at Bristol Rovers, albeit over a 12-month period rather than over one season, and I think it went a bit wrong towards the end. But his record at Mansfield was appalling, and I'm pretty sure they pretty much tapped him up, didn't they, to get him? I think they approached Bristol Rovers. So it's one of those ones, I suppose, he almost looks at you as maybe his last chance to prove himself as a league boss.
Yeah, probably. I mean, look, there's no point pretending otherwise. Newport County is not a massively attractive club to go to for an experienced Football League manager. So, having made the decision to get rid of Rowbury, the board were very clear. They needed someone who had experience, who knew what needed to be done and could grind out results. And Coco, as he's affectionately known, all right, he's had some failures, but he's had some successes as well. And he's a very experienced manager, very experienced coach, and I think he could see how to get the best out of this team. And he had straight away he had an impact. We managed to get a couple of wins under our belt. We stopped shipping cheap goals. We've just come off the back of 4 straight draws, which sort of tells its own story. Yeah. We can go to places like Leyton Orient and grind out a 0-0. We went to AFC Wimbledon on Boxing Day, got a respectable draw there. But then you have home games against the likes of Crawley, who were on the back of a terrible run, came to Rodney Parade and were 2-0 up, and but again we had the fight in us to come back and get a point out of that. So we're getting points, not loads of them, but as long as we can keep just grinding away at that, and maybe if we can strengthen in January, if we can bring in that midfielder that we're missing, a kind of a strong leader in the centre of the park who can dictate the play and just help us control games and sort of build a team around them. I think that's what we were missing in August or July it was when the season kicks off, wasn't it? And we've been conspicuously without that sort of player for the first 5 or 6 months. But I think if we can bring someone in who can do that role, then I think we can perhaps start to turn some of those draws into wins as well.
Yeah, a couple of points from that. One, you picked up 4 points from Orient this season, so you've done pretty well in that sense. You're one of the few teams that have managed to get results against them.
Well, it's funny, we always have the hoodoo over Orient, and generally speaking, we tend to get more spooked by other teams than teams getting spooked by us. But for some reason, we just always manage to turn it on against Leyton Orient. I don't know why, but it's just a weird quirk. Yeah.
2, you talk about getting experienced bosses in. Could be worse. You could have got Graham Wesley back, couldn't you? So let's
indeed, even the mention of his name brings me out in a cold sweat.
Yeah, I imagine it would do. I just want to ask you about someone else who works for your club, who has a Carl United connection, in that we were the club that brought him over to England when he first came here. It's Darren Kelly. He's your sporting director now. He started out at Carl. He was brought in for about 100 grand, I think, from Derry City, and he never quite hit the expectations that there was connected to him, because I think he was a Northern Ireland under 21 at the time. There was expectations he would go to be full international and play at a high level. He joined a very poor Carlisle side, let's just say that. What about the job he's doing? He's something, one of those sort of people who just works behind the scenes you don't really know too much about?
So Darren Kelly is the perfect example of the sort of person at a football club who, when everything's going well, their name doesn't get mentioned, and as soon as things start going wrong, they get blamed for all of the ills of the world. So he was brought in as a sporting director towards the end of Mike Flynn's period as manager, before he left for Walsall. And there was a slight feeling that bringing Darren Kelly in as a sporting director was one of the push factors that saw Flynn go. The rationale was that we needed to have more consistency throughout the club, so that the academy teams and stuff were playing the same style of football as the first team, and that we had someone who was focusing on transfers, which had been a bit of a mixed bag for Flynn. And the early signs, I think, were relatively good for Darren Kelly. Some of the loan players we brought in last season, the likes of Finn Azaz, Ollie Cooper, Jake Kane, have gone on to much better things higher up the league. Where I think it went wrong was probably actually not his fault. So he was there to try and oversee transfers, and I think James Rowbury went over his head and insisted on not perhaps bringing in the players who Kelly was recommending, and maybe bringing in some of the youth players at Cardiff City who Rowbury had worked with, and some of those didn't work out. But of course, because we, by common consent, had a bad transfer window, that was all laid at Kelly's door. I think the next month is going to be make or break for Darren Kelly. If we can bring in 1 or 2 quality players now, and he gets the credit for it, I think he'll bed in that position. But if it goes wrong, I wonder whether we may look again at that model of having a sporting director with a coach or first team manager beneath him. He talks a good game. Whenever he's spoken to fans forums and stuff, he always comes across as very likeable, very knowledgeable, and we hear a lot about his great connections and his marvellous database. But yeah, ultimately he will sink or swim on the basis of the players who come through the door.
Well, let's talk about your January transfer window so far, because I was having a look to try and spot him. Because I went on Soccer Base, and the first thing I spotted was, you haven't got any loanees in. And I thought, that seems strange. And it turns out you sent the 3 loanees back, or they went back to their clubs at least at the start of January, didn't they? That didn't quite work out with them.
Yeah, I mean, we still have a couple of loan players. So Nathan Mariah Welsh, who will probably start on Saturday in midfield, we've got a loan from Bournemouth. He's probably been the pick of them as a sort of attacking central midfielder.
I think he played well against us, actually, I seem to remember. I think
he looks good. The other one who we really like, and I think we gave him player of the pod in our last recording, is Adam Lewis, who's a young left-back from Liverpool. He's not the tallest, but in the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's really come on. Loves a slide tackle. The sort of player that gets you out your seat, going, "Get in, you dirty little bastard!" As soon as he goes sending a player flying. So we've had a couple of good loanees, but the ones we sent back, Chanka Zimba, Hayden Linley, and Thierry Nevers, who's since been signed by Bradford.
Yeah,
they either hadn't worked out or they didn't fit the system we were playing. So I think that there was a feeling, we'll send them back and have another throw of the dice. So I suspect in the next. Maybe in the next few days, but certainly in the next few weeks, we'll see some other loanees come in. The other 2 significant departures were long-term Newport County players. So Matty Dolan, who's been around the place forever, has gone to Hartlepool on loan till the end of the season and will doubtless stay on there. So he's from the northeast originally, has a wife and young baby up there and wants to go back. And I think we sort of expected that was going to happen. He hadn't. Although he's club captain, he hadn't actually been starting, and so that was no great surprise. And then Robbie Wilmot, another one who's been around for a long time, has gone to link up again with Mike Flynn at Walsall. And again, he's one who'd been, maybe on the bench, but certainly not starting. Flynn always used to get the best out of him, and maybe will do again. But he was a winger playing in a system where we don't tend to have wingers. So the feeling is we'll have another throw the dice with some loanees, and then with the wages we've saved on Wilmot and Dolan, we can hopefully now bring in that kind of experienced central midfielder who we can now kind of build a team around, because we've lost a lot of long-standing players over the last 12 months or so, and we probably now need to start again almost and go, right, what is Cotland's philosophy and how are we going to build a team around it?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned those 2 there. That was my next question. I was going to ask about those 2 as well. Dolan going, that does explain why, actually, if he's gone back to the north. Because he's one, as soon as I saw he was gone, I was like, really? I was surprised, because he's one that me and my mate always say, like, love to see him sign for Carlisle. But always really impresses me every time we played against him. So kind of makes sense, I suppose. And sometimes you just have that cycle, don't you, where players come to the end of it and you have to move on and almost start again, don't you? Let's talk about some of your current squad then. We'll start with the one that's got the link to Carlisle. A man who's just got himself fit and seems to be getting a few goals as well, Ozzy Zanzala. How is he doing now he's managed to get himself fit? Because he was a strange one with us in that he came in from Crewe at a time when we were right near the top of the division. We had that horrible period where, if you remember, we had, I think, something... I don't think we played a first-team game for 45 days because of COVID and weather cancellations and stuff like that, and we ended up playing 12 weeks in a row of Saturday Tuesdays, and it basically knackered our season. He came in then, really struggled at the start, and then suddenly found his scoring feat, and I think he scored 5 in 10 at the end of the season. But he seems to be one who just doesn't settle anywhere for a long period. So are you optimistic that he's going to do it at the at Rodney Parade?
Well, he's one. Weirdly, it's still too early to say. He looked great pre-season, started the season really well, formed a nice partnership with Omar Bogle. He's quick, Zanzala, and can finish well. Then he got a horrendous injury, was out for ages, and he's only really now back at full match fitness. I think there's more to come from him. I think he's one who once he starts getting a good run of games and a good run of goals, I think, we've got a lot riding on him. In a weird way, I think he's perhaps a more dangerous striker than Omar Bogle, even though Bogle is, vastly sort of more experienced. I think Zanzala's the one who maybe gives defenders a slightly harder time. I really like the look of him. Certainly his pace terrifies, big lumbering 4th division centre-backs. So, I think he will come good in the last sort of third of the season, probably.
Yeah, he's like I said, he's one of the. It would be typical if he scored against us the weekend. Although by all accounts, from what the Barrow fans told us, he missed an absolute sitter against us last season. When I say sitter, I mean literally 3 yards out and put it wide. And his season fell apart from that point, apparently, with them. And that's when he ended up falling out with Cooper, and obviously ended up at Exeter, and then obviously now with yourselves. Well, let's go through some of the rest of your squad, some of the other sort of key men in there. I'll just pick out a few names that always stand out to me. Mickey Demetriou in defence is one that always stands out as a player who's done well at this level.
Yeah, massive long throw as well. That is our it's our overused attacking option. Is the ball goes out anywhere in the opposition final third, and then it's right. Get Big Mickey up. He'll get his towel, dry the ball off, and then launch it into the box. It's not always pretty. I've got to be honest. It's not always effective, especially when you do it every single time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think there's a feeling of just do a short one, keep you guessing. But the stats will tell you that we score a decent amount of goals from it.
Yeah, Will Evans in attack. He was an interesting one when he signed, obviously from Barlow.
We've got a few lads in there from the Welsh leagues who have. It takes them a little while to get used to full-time professional football, but the likes of Will Evans, Priestley Farquharson, James Waite have come from the Welsh leagues and have all broadly worked out. Will Evans works so hard, big, strong, athletic striker, covers a lot of ground, great work rate. Couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo so far this season, but sooner or later a goal is going to go in off his arse, and then he's going to really start firing. It's just confidence, but I really like him in terms of his technical attributes. He's trying too hard to get a goal. You can see.
Yeah, I'm just before we wrap up here. I'm just looking through your squad here on Transfermarkt. It looks like nearly all of your squad is out of contract at the end of the season, so it is quite a big campaign, isn't it, for a lot of those players? Isn't it a chance for them to impress and either earn new deals with you or move on elsewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we will have the usual kind of mass exodus. I think it'll be even greater this season than perhaps in recent years, which makes it even more important that we stay up with a little bit to spare, and then we can start that rebuilding job. Even some of the promising younger players, the likes of Farquharson at centre back, who's been really good for us, is probably likely to move on and get a better offer. That is, yourself, that's what happens at this level. You get a good young player, they come out of contract and they'll move on somewhere else, and you're left with the ones who perhaps aren't so good. But we are just at that point in the cycle. We've had a good few years of continuity, and I think we're going to have to almost start again from scratch in the summer.
Stark reality of being a fan of a lower league club, isn't it? I think that's pretty much it then. There's only one more thing to do, obviously, that we do at the end of every episode. Every time we do the behind the line section, is ask you for your prediction for this weekend.
Well, I maybe won't be popular here with Carlisle fans, but I'm going with a 0-0 draw on the basis that we are hard to beat at the moment. We've drawn 4 in a row, like I said. So you've got to say a draw is the most likely result, and I just think it will be sod's law if I drive 5-6 hours up the motorway and don't see a single goal for it. So 0-0 is my prediction.
Yeah, well, that would be sod's law for us, because that would be our 10th draw of the season. So it shows you where we've got a problem at the moment. We just can't convert those draws into wins, unfortunately, at times. But there you go. Ed, thanks very much. Safe journey up, and all the best for the rest of the season after this weekend.
Cheers. Diolch yn fawr. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks once again to Ed for giving up his time to speak to us. Yeah, weird times for Notts County again there. Newport County, isn't it? Because they're one of the longest serving teams in League Two now. But they don't feel like, their fans don't feel like Billy Big Boots that like a lot of teams get sometimes when they come to the league and stuff. They're very sort of, I think they know what level they're at, but they want to aspire to be that League One team.
I think grounded is the word you're looking for.
Absolutely, yeah, they're definitely a grounded team, and I kind of feel like they're a club that's capable of going to that next level. I think they're a good football league club, aren't they? That's what they feel like now. They don't feel like, I mean, you remember them from the original incarnation back in the 80s, don't you, Dan? So it's a little bit different. You probably think it that way. For me, they were a new club coming up, but there you go. Right, well, before we get into talk about the match itself, Mike is not here with us this week. First time in a few episodes, actually. We haven't had all three of us. But here's the question of the week that Mike sent us in.
So there are 7 players who have played for us in the last 15 years who are English and have double-barrelled surnames. Who are they? And one of them, he was capped for another country other than England, but he was born in this country.
Oh, wow. That's a terrific question. We'll leave that one. We'll come back to it at the end because there's probably quite a few names that I'm already thinking of 1 or 2 off the top of my head.
Yeah, I've got a couple already.
I've got a couple definitely already, so we'll come back to the one towards the end. So, yeah, this weekend we play Newport County at Brunton Park, 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. Referee for this one is Martin Woods from Lancashire. It's his first full season as an EFL referee. He's taken charge of 16 games so far this season, handing out 64 yellows and 4 red cards. Quite card happy, isn't he, in terms of that? Around about a red card every 4 games? Don't really want to say that, do you? Last season, he handed out 59 yellow cards and 2 red cards in 17 games. He actually took charge of a United game last season. The 1-0 defeat at Walsall in April was actually his first ever EFL game. He was given one while he was still a National League referee. Dinel Simier was booked for United that day. Head-to-head record, 28th meeting between the two sides. United have won 7, 9 have been draws, and the Exiles have won 11. Well, Dan, let's talk about their squad a bit then, and some of their signings stuff. I mean, one thing that came clear from what Ed was saying in the summer is that their transfer business wasn't the best in the summer. They needed a bit of a change. They got a bit stale. They had a squad
I was going to say, did we not say that in the pre-season possibly, that they possibly are a little stale now, and that was obviously part of probably why Flynn left.
Yeah, possibly. I think he needed a new challenge. I have a feel. When you look at it, they've relied heavily on loanees from Cardiff and Bristol City and Swansea over recent seasons. And they're in a good position to get players like that, aren't they?
I was going to say, it's sort of should, because that's their area. You know?
But it kind of feels like they've sort of saturated that a little bit too much now, and they're not really getting the same quality. They only had one player on loan from Cardiff this season, in Chanka Zimba, and he's gone back to Cardiff already. In fact, of the 5 loanees they signed in the summer, 3 have gone back, which... We were saying this before, weren't we, Dan? It's a bit of a common theme in League 2 this season. A lot of loan players are going back early, aren't they? In the loan window. It seems like clubs are either taking them back to send them to a higher level or to a different club, maybe one challenging for promotion instead of relegation. Or in our case, obviously with Stretton, they're looking to sell him on because he's out of contract at the end of the season. So it's kind of a sort of a weird thing this season. A lot of clubs getting their work done early this year. I've noticed a lot of clubs actually signing players for undisclosed fees. Now, I suspect when you say undisclosed fee, you're talking about 10, 20 grand or something like that, are you? Just to say, look.
Yeah, I think more
contract
will
this
be
summer, yeah.
the sell-ons percentages will be the key thing in a lot of this.
Yeah, it's a lot of players who are out of contract in summer who will be leaving anyway, basically. So that's the kind of thing, isn't it? But yeah, they've lost 3 of the loanees. Thierry Neves from West Ham, he's actually gone out on loan to Bradford City now. So he's been loaned back and gone out brought back by West Ham and gone to Bradford City. Hayden Lindley, he's gone back to Aston Villa, and as we mentioned, Chuck Zimber has already gone back. But also, the 2 that have gone out, these were interesting ones, weren't they? First of all, Robbie Wilmot, he's gone out on loan to join up with Mike Flynn again at Walsall till the end of the season. I think he's out of contract in the summer again, so he's probably one who will move on. But the one that really stood out is Matty Dolan, who's a real long-serving player, and a player I think we both agree we wouldn't have minded seeing at Brunton Park, because every time he plays against us, he's been quality. He's gone on loan to Hartlepool. Now, it turns out he's from Hartlepool. I didn't actually know this, so it kind of makes sense maybe. I think his wife and his kid have been based up there the whole time he's been at Newport, so I think he's basically saying, look, I'm getting a bit older, I want to settle down with, and be with my wife and kid a bit more, which I understand.
I fancy a good relegation battle for the rest of the season.
Yeah, exactly. So he's gone on loan there till the end of the season, and he will sign permanently with them in the summer. They've already confirmed that at Hartlepool. So good signing for them, to be fair. But yeah, they've not brought anyone in yet. And when you look at the squad, it is quite thin. I mean, there's only 23 players in there, and a few of them are youngsters who are not really likely to challenge. So I have a feeling the 18 they pick at the moment is near enough as good as they can pick, really. They haven't really got any other options beyond that. So I think they've got enough to keep themselves away from trouble, do you think?
Yeah, they've got a little bit of experience in there still, I mean, they've got one of the finest named players ever in Priestley Farquharson, which is just a fantastic name, isn't it?
You've got to be a good player to have a name like that. And by all accounts, he is. To be fair,
that's just a fantastic name. But the likes of Mickey Dimitru, you know, he's been around a while.
Yeah.
You know, I think they've got enough. You know, Zanzala will get the odd goal for them.
Omar Bogle will chip in with a few. He'll probably play as a target.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'm just looking at the league table here. That the 18th. 7 points ahead of Hartlepool.
Okay, so a bit tighter than I thought, actually. I thought they were a little bit further away. So, yeah, it's tight. The thing that stood out to me when I was looking through it, and I've put it down in the talking points, you might have seen it, Dan. No one's really battered them this season. Only one club has scored more than 2 goals against Newport County this season, and that was Salford City, quite close to the start of the season, actually. And that was only a 3-2 win, so it was a tight game, that one. So no one's battered them, so they're not a team that you can go out and just hammer.
I imagine they've tightened up recently because the last 4 games have drawn.
Yeah.
You know, one of those was Orient at home, which is, I think that was just before New Year, that game.
Yeah.
That's a decent point, that. You know, there's not many teams
they've picked up
Orient in there.
They've picked up 4 points from Orient this season. They were the only team to beat them at the Brisbane Road as well, which is quite incredible when you think about it. So, there's a kind of feeling of like they'll ship 1 or 2 goals, but they were struggling to get goals, and the reason now they're starting to get draws, it's coincided with the return from injury of the man you mentioned just then, Dan, Ozzy Zanzala. He seems to have made a bit of a difference for them, doesn't it? He's a real quandary, isn't he, Zanzala? Because when he came to us, he sort of started poorly, didn't he? He looked, there was kind of who's this clogger we've signed, really, wasn't it? When those first 5 or 6 games, he really struggled to make an impact, and then suddenly he just burst into life, didn't he? That stretch towards the end of the season.
He's clearly got something about him because he does get goals now and again.
Yeah.
But he's bloody frustrating.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much his agent is in his ear.
Yeah, that's one thing I'd worry about with him.
I'm just looking at his career here. After having 2.5 years at Accrington, he was at Crewe and Carlisle in the 2021 season.
Yeah.
Then he was at Barrow and Exeter in 21-22.
Yeah.
And he's been at Newport this season. Probably would have moved if he hadn't been injured. But in that 2.5 seasons, he's actually scored 14 goals, you know, so he does get the odd goal.
Yeah. And he's not played every game in this season. He's had injuries as well.
No, he's come off the bench quite a bit as well. You know, he's an enigma type, isn't he?
Yeah, it's strange that by all accounts, his Barrow career went tits up after that game against us, didn't it? The home game where he missed. I mean, I can't even describe how easy of a chance it was against Barrow. He was about 3 yards out, wasn't he? He should have scored, and he put it wide. And since then, apparently that's the point where Mark Cooper lost it with him, and that's where they fell out. That's the rumour.
Yeah.
So I feel like he will be vital, keeping him fit and keeping him happy. I can't see him moving this January now because I think he's going to be settled. He's getting to a team now. So I think he'll be a big player for them. I think Nathan Mariah Welsh, who's on loan from Bournemouth, he looked really good against us in the game earlier this season. So he could be a key player as well. We've mentioned Will Evans before, haven't we? We're quite excited about the fact they've got a player from Ballatown in there. You know, they get so much more... It's almost exotic players, aren't they, signing them from Welsh clubs? And like us, we have to sign from English clubs mostly. But
to be fair, somewhere like Newport is a perfect place for a decent League of Wales player to go because it's a step up, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely.
It's a bit like we should be in the Scottish lower leagues.
Yeah, we should be looking around those leagues, really.
Yeah.
There must be a couple of all right players who might look all right.
My dossier is always available.
Indeed,
for
it is.
perusal if the powers that be need.
You're always bagging on about you, to be fair. So I mean, in terms of manager, James Rowbury was manager at the start of the season, and we remember earlier in the season when we spoke to Ed, he was saying how they really wanted him to succeed because he's a Newport lad, you know, youngest ever person to do all the FA of Wales coaching badges, get all the badges, someone who's really well thought of. And I think he just tried too hard to change them into sort of a passing team and being something different that they really weren't. And they've done a really about turn, haven't they? They've gone from Rowbury, someone who wanted to play good football, to Graham Coughlin, who if anyone remembers him as a defender, he was agricultural, wasn't he? He would no nonsense centre back for Southend and Mansfield and a few other clubs, and he's come in. He's been given a 2.5 year deal that suggests they see something in him long term as well, and he's an interesting one, isn't he? Because a lot's been made about him potentially being a really good manager, and he did fairly well at Bristol Rovers over a 12-month period, but then walked out on them to go to Mansfield Town, and he was a disaster there, wasn't he?
Yeah, Mansfield's a strange one.
Yeah,
they can go through managers. I think a lot of it is whether you get on with the chairman's wife, basically.
Yeah, possibly.
You chuckle, but that basically seems to be.
Well, she was running the club.
The
I don't know if she is now.
you get, you know.
So yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? By all accounts, he's basically he's tightened them up and said, we need to just get results here rather than be getting beat most weeks. And the last 4 results suggest he's done that with the draws, doesn't it? But
yeah,
interesting to see how he does long term. I'm still not 100% convinced he's the perfect fit
for
for them.
It'll be interesting to see who he manages to bring in this window.
Well, he's not necessarily the man who's going to be bringing people in, is he? Because they've got a sporting director. And who is the sporting director, Dan?
Well, he will have the biggest telly in South Wales because it's none other than former Carlisle player and Irishman Darren Kelly.
Yeah, Darren Kelly. So, Darren, for those who can't remember, the younger fans, 20 years ago we signed him for 100 grand, wasn't it? I think from Derry City. And a big hoo-ha was made up because he was really well sought, wasn't he? There was a lot of big clubs interested in him. And Roddy convinced him to come here, and it just never worked out, did it? I don't know what... I can't understand it, because he clearly was a very good player for Derry, and it just never quite worked, did it? And he had an okay career after he left us. I think he went back to Ireland for a bit. He's played for a few other clubs. And coaching-wise, he's supposed to be very well thought of, and the Newport fans seem quite impressed with him when he's done his forums. And as Ed said on the chat there, the thing is, when things tend to go tits up in terms of signings don't work out and everything like that, it's always the sporting director that gets blamed, isn't it? It's never a case of thing. And the reports seem to be that Rowbury actually almost took charge of a lot of the signings, getting all these young lads from Cardiff and stuff, and it just didn't work. Yeah. So the big question will be who Darren can bring into them this transfer window, I think. And
I'm sure they'll be able to do plenty of watching on that massive telly.
Imagine up the split screen.
For those that really don't get it. When he came here, there was a joke about him. I can't remember even.
No, tell you what it was.
Basically said.
No, I'll tell you what it was, Dan. Right in the match program, we used to say whose players' house do you hang around, or who do you hang around with? The players.
Yeah, that's it.
And the players, you say, we go around Darren's and watch the games on his telly and stuff like that. So everyone was convinced that Darren Kelly just had this enormous telly that all the other players were in awe of.
I think what it was he had the biggest telly, which back then. Like a 45, 50 inch was classed as big.
Yeah.
Now people buy 65, 75 upwards.
Exactly.
But back then, most people in the bedrooms had a 14 inch and maybe a 28 inch in the living room. So him having this 45 inch telly was the legend of Darren Kelly, and his big telly was born.
Exactly that. So I think that's where it comes from. So I think we've pretty much covered off Newport there. It'll be a challenging game for us, I think. I think it's one of those ones I don't expect us to batter them, especially the fact that we're still sort of waiting for these enforcements to come in, aren't we, in terms of attacking options. So it could be a bit of a challenge, possibly, especially if we pick up a couple of knocks. That's the biggest worry, isn't it, I guess? Injury-wise, just a couple of new ones, really, obviously, in the recent times. Obviously, we know that Charters is now going to be out for 3 to 4 months, so his season's probably over. Jack Ellis hopefully should be back mid-February, so it's actually, it's only about a month or so now, so it's not too bad in that sense. Still waiting for some confirmation on what's happening with Darren Edmondson. Ryan Edmondson.
There was a nod that it had been longer term in an interview with Paul Simpson, but there's never been a cast date on it.
No, indeed there hasn't. In terms of the lineup for this game, Dan, to be honest, it almost picks itself, doesn't it? Because we're a little bit short. I suppose would you stick with the same back line, give Joel Senior another game probably at right wing back?
I think you are. He's had a bit of a rest since Donny.
Yeah,
a couple of weeks into him.
But big question, I suppose, is does Alfie McCalmont come into midfield straight away?
Possibly. Possibly, because it would allow Moxon to move up a bit, wouldn't it?
the question is with that, what we do in attack? Because obviously Dennis is going to start because.
The big question in attack is Amari Patrick fit or not?
Yeah, if Amari Patrick's fit, you can go with your. You could probably go with your 3-4-3, can't you? You can stick Amari
is he fit enough to start, or do they want to bring him on? That's.
I wonder if they're giving him this extra 2 weeks because they said they could have used him over Christmas and they took the time.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's giving him enough time to get himself to the level where they're comfortable starting.
We've got this Saturday, and then we've got a period of 5 games in 15 days.
Yeah.
So we don't want to overcook the goose type thing, do we?
True. And it could be JKG, couldn't it? John Kamani Gordon, sorry. If he's confirmed by then, we'd hope, he could be the option.
Yeah.
Could have Joe Garner on the bench as well as another attacking option. So
if Gordon is confirmed in time, it wouldn't surprise me if he started on the left with Dennis in the middle, Gibson on the right, and then Patrick could come on for him around 60-65 minutes or half an hour.
Yeah, that's potentially what I do, isn't
it? And like I say, if Gordon does come in, I could actually see him and Patrick interchanging a lot over the next sort of 3 weeks with that run of games.
Definitely. Right, prediction time. In terms of the prediction league, it's tight at the top now, Dan. I'm level with you on 16 points. Mike is kind of catching up. He's on 10 points. So he's still 6 behind. What are you going for this game?
I'm going to go for a 3-1 win. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have Christian Dennis, Owen Moxon, and Paul Huntington.
Ooh, okay. Right, I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. I think it's going to be tight because they're obviously not shipping too many goals at the moment. Actually, no, you know what? Actually, I'm going to go for a 3-0 win. I think we're going to be the second team to get more than 3 goals against them. Sod it. I'm going for a 3-0 win, and I'm going to go for goals from Christian Dennis because I have to. Jordan Gibson to get 1, and Joel Senior. Go on, Joel Senior will get a goal. Right, here's Mike's prediction for the game.
So I'm going to go for 3-0 this week with Moxon, Dennis, and Morgan Feeney as well.
Ooh, one different from you, Dan.
Yeah.
That's going to be exciting on corners, isn't it? You two are going to be cheering for. Right, okay, let's get some answers for Mike's question then.
Right. Toby Shaw-Silver.
Shaw-Silver's an obvious one, yes, of course. Didn't even think of him, to be honest.
Mark Bridge Wilkinson.
Yes. How long was the time period again? I can't remember.
I think he said 15 years, didn't he?
15 years, right. Okay,
but he came back for that second spell, so I would be...
Yes, Bridge Wilkinson, yeah. I mean, for me, Courtney Repp and Walter is an obvious one.
I've got him.
Jennison Mary Williams.
Yeah,
another.
Good call.
So there's 4 we've got. Did he say 6 was in total? Was it or 7?
7, I think.
Right, okay.
Troy Archibald Henville.
Great shout. Someone who sounds like a Tory lord, doesn't he? With Troy Archibald Henville. Right, so that's 5. Got 2 more to get going. You must have them because you're good at these kind of things.
Yeah, well, the obvious one is Knight Percival.
Yes, good shout. Okay, so who's the final one?
One more. The man we paid £1,000 for.
Oh, Jamal Campbell Rice, and he's the one who played for another country because he played for Jamaica, didn't he?
Yeah,
I think he's English born, isn't he? So
yeah.
So there you go. Right,
that's the 7 I've been while we've been talking. I've been scribbling.
Yeah,
and they're the 7 I've come up with. So.
Right, so let's hear the answer. Let's see whether it's correct or not.
So they are Jennison Mary Williams, Troy Archibald Henville, Courtney Mappen Walter, Mark Bridge Wilkinson, Toby Shaw-Silver, Nathaniel Knight Percival, and then the last one, who got capped for a different country, was of course Jamal Campbell Rice.
Yes.
What a beauty. There you go. All 7 of us. That's teamwork, isn't it? Yeah, you'll have to challenge us better than that.
For some reason, I saw some sort of question about double barrel surnames not so long back. I think there was a team played with 3 or 4 of them in, and I happened to flick through the Carlisle ones, so they're quite fresh in my memory.
Wow,
luckily for Mike.
you have to get out of bed sooner than a day than that, Mike, to catch us out. Right then, X-Files. That's what's up next, isn't it? So you're going to run through the X-Files section for this extended period, isn't it? Yeah,
bumper roundup like we said in the last episode. We'll go back to Boxing Day. Ryan Bowman was sent off for Shrewsbury in their 2-1 defeat at Cambridge.
He's one who's been linked with a move back to us as well, hasn't he? I think that's people getting mixed up with the former player being linked, isn't it? Possibly, but
yeah, possibly. Paddy Madden scored for Stockport in a 2-0 win over Crewe. Man we've already mentioned, Ozzy Zanzala, scored from the spot for Newport in their 1-1 draw at Wimbledon. Max Crocombe scored an own goal for Grimsby in their 3-2 defeat at Harrogate.
You once should watch this, didn't you? And there's nothing he could have done about it, was there? I think it was
it was just winning off him sort of thing.
Shot hit the post and came back off him basically.
Yeah, Kedwin Scott scored twice for Notts County in the 4-1 win over Oldham. Aaron Hayden scored for Wrexham in the 5-0 win over Solihull. He's got a few this season. Hayden, hasn't he?
Indeed.
Olamola scored for Wealdstone in the 3-2 win over Maidenhead.
Yep.
Mark Ellis scored for Torquay in the 1-1 draw with Yeovil. Mark Beck scored for Darlington in the 3-2 home defeat to Scarborough Athletic. And closer to home, Dan Wordsworth scored for Workington in the 3-0 home win over Kidsgrove. And one more. This was possibly the midweek games. I can't remember.
It was, yeah. I left a gap there, deliberately, because it's in the
I think it was the only one in the midweek game because there was a few called off. Tom Anderson scored the winner for Doncaster in the 4-3 victory over Rochdale. New Year's Day and beyond, Kedwin Scott scored again. Notts County in the 2-2 draw at Oldham. The National League do home and away, don't they?
It's one of those things I really miss about being in non-league, actually, is the double header. It worked really well.
The other leagues must as well, because Mark Beck scored twice for Darlington in the 5-2 win at Scarborough Athletic.
Bit of revenge there for them, wasn't there?
Yeah. Carl Dempsey scored for Bolton in the 3-0 win at Barnsley. Dempsey has been in the news. We won't comment on it because it's an ongoing court case.
Yes.
You can check the News and Star if you're interested. James Tavernier scored for Rangers in the 2-2 draw against Celtic in the Old Firm derby. Zanzala scored again, injury time equaliser for Newport in the 2-2 draw with Crawley. FA Cup, Jenny Yates scored in Blackpool's 4-1 win over Notts Forest. Micah Obiero scored and then was sent off in Wealdstone's 3-1 win at Eastleigh. He's a player who's popped up recently. Jack Bridge scored again. Yeah. Southend's 3-0 win over Solihull.
They've got some issues off the pitch, but they're doing okay on the pitch this season, aren't they, Southend? They're doing a lot better, I think, yeah.
Paddy Madden scored in Stockport's 2-1 defeat to Walsall in the FA Cup, which is obviously where we would have been if we'd beat Walsall. Yeah. I think, did they get, was it Leicester at home, I think?
Yes,
Walsall have got now, yeah. And the last goal, another one for Kedwin Scott in the 1-1 draw with Boreham Wood. That's 13 in 26 in the league for
incredible,
now.
Isn't it? Well, that really is
for
what we
top
missed
of
out.
The table, Notts County.
Before you go on, Dan, I should say there is one other we missed off the list. Stephen Rigg, he scored for Workington in their 3-3 draw against Prescott Cables the other day. Interesting one, that if you haven't seen it, there's a brilliant picture of a granddad and his little grandson standing in the rain under an umbrella at Borough Park during that game, refusing to move away from their usual spot at the Down end. So that was a really good photo. You haven't seen that on Twitter. Brilliant stuff.
Former academy midfielder Joe White joined Exeter on loan from Newcastle to the end of the season. Long flight, that. Rory Delap has left his coaching role at Stoke.
Yeah.
And we're told that David Simonton got married in between Christmas and New Year, so congratulations to David and his good lady.
Indeed, good stuff, David, there. A really nice bit of news to end on there. And that's it, Exiles section. That's it for this week's episode, Dan, isn't it? Lots packing, hasn't there? Considering we haven't had a match to review, we've covered a fair bit there.
I think the questions probably went on longer than we expected.
Well, yeah, originally we were going to cut a few out before. Well, we might as well get as many of them done as possible, just to be fair on people. There are a few people, I think, who've sent them in while we've been recording and things like that, and apologies we haven't picked them up. We'll try and pick them up in a future episode if possible. I'll try and collate those together and we'll see how it goes. Thank you once again to our sponsors, the London branch, for their support this season. And in terms of upcoming episodes, by the time you listen to this, you will have seen the John Halpin episode is out. It's out there for you to listen to. So go listen to the interview with Halpin. It's a cracking little listen, that is. We'll have the preview coming up for the Bradford game next week as well. Not sure if we'll do a separate one for the Hartlepool game. We'll have to work out what we're going to do there. It turns on it basically depends on availability, doesn't it? Of the three of
I
us.
think we're probably easier trying to do double headers. So
I think we probably will end up doing that.
Looking at our fixtures, I'm just bringing them up when they load.
I think we might try do a separate one for the Barrow one, but we'll see how it goes. Basically, it depends on who's available to record. And stuff like that. That's the big
we'll
thing.
probably do Bradford and Hartlepool together. Then I suppose we could do Rochdale and Barrow.
Yeah. But we'll have to have a look at that anyway. So yeah, there's those coming up, and like I said, we're working behind the scenes trying to get a few ideas together in terms of special episodes. We've got a good idea for a special episode about legendary players that we're looking at. We might want to get you involved in that, but you'll see more details on social media. And when I say get involved, I mean actually come on the episode and record with us and talk about some legendary Carl United players. So we'll have to see how we can get that sorted. That's it, Dan. Thanks very much for joining me. Looking forward to the game this weekend. Finally getting into action again after those 2 weeks off. And thanks everyone for listening. And up the Blues.
Up the Blues.